Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Justin, thanks for being here.
Of course, I'm really excited to be here. As we were talking before we hopped on here, a lot of synchronicities and the things we believe in and teach, and I'm just super excited to dive in today.
I'm so excited too. So we were introduced through our friend Todd, and when I first saw okay, finance business expert, I'm like, okay, is this just going to be like the typical like finance bro kind of guy? But I was diving into your content, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like you were talking. I one of the episodes I was listening to, you were talking about meditation and like getting certainty by gaining clarity, and I was like, whoa, okay, he gets it. And it just seems like there's such a good balance between your mindset, spirituality, but also business. So, like, how did that all come about? Have you always been that way? Like, what's your story of getting to this point where you have like this business that's successful, but you're also really taking care of your like mindset and everything else?
Love that question. Um, think the pursuit of being better with money started from some childhood issues and wounds. When I was 10 years old, my parents filed for bankruptcy. And because of that, it led to a lot of unideal things like them getting a divorce, us having to leave my childhood home, me switching school districts, and even having to give away my dog because the houses that my parents were going to were rental properties that didn't allow pets. Right. And so from like a young childhood age, like had that poor experience around money, or at least what I thought was money at the time. But as I got older, I'm like, wait, my parents made a lot of money. This was like the early 90s or like the late 90s. And at
Mhm.
that time, they're making like well over 150 put together, right? Just at different times, maybe even a little bit more, a little bit less. And I'm like, whoa, what happened there? Right. And so didn't dive too deep into the internal world that attracted that external world for them. When I first started off, it was more so like, let me just build the systems and strategies that just help me manage my money better, help me track my behaviors, and help me just maybe manipulate them in a good way, right? Like awareness is what we need to then create change. And so it's kind of where like I first started when it came to business and finance, particularly finance, right? But as time went on, I really started to realize that the quote was true that like your external wealth is just a reflection of your internal wealth, right? And trying to measure and manipulate the behaviors are only half the battle. And if you want to get long-term sustainable results, you must address things from a belief level. And so we started to realize at JFF, my company, Journey to Financial Freedom, that like we really needed to add in that mindset, that internal world component, because we'd have a lot of clients come to us and on paper, Stephanie, they'd be like, okay, in 6 months, you should have $10,000 to your name and these two cards paid off and X, Y, and Z on paper done. And we get to the end of the 6 months and it's like, okay, what happened? Why?
Right.
By the numbers, that should have happened. And really what happened was just there was just this deep rooted belief or belief system or emotions or thought processes and paradigms around money, or maybe even things related to the attraction and building of money and wealth that needed to be addressed if we ultimately wanted to see the behaviors follow along. And so, lastly, here, and I'll shut up. But the biggest thing I found is that our reality is just a direct correlation to our behaviors, right? Our behaviors are stemmed from our beliefs, and our beliefs come from our traumas and experiences in life. And so I really started realizing my own journey and in my client's journey, but particularly my own journey as I started to take a spiritual journey about 2 years ago to really heal myself, that like until we do the work internally, like our external world really will not make the significant shifts we want it to make.
Oh, yeah, I agree 1,000%. I want to touch on something you said. So your parents are making like around 150 in the 90s, which I mean, adjust for inflation, that would be a boatload of money today, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's interesting because so my dad was a bankruptcy lawyer and I did a lot of work for him like when I was in high school and college. And I totally agree with what you're saying. Like I saw people of all levels of life, like all different incomes come in to file bankruptcy. And I always thought that was interesting because it's like, here's people who I would consider to be very wealthy and they have it all. And, their finances are falling apart and their life starts falling apart. And so it's like, I really couldn't explain why that was happening, but that kind of got me thinking like, okay, there's something else going on here. So there is something, internally happening. And then even through like this podcast, as I've met different actresses and celebrities and people who you're like, oh man, they are like wealthy and they have it all. and then come to find out like they're really struggling. And so it's kind of interesting, and it really does boil down to these beliefs and these wounds. And some of us, you go one generation back or even just to our childhood, and there were things that happened that you might not even remember that happened that completely created this belief in your mind that whatever, you're not worthy of it, or you can't have it, or it's hard. So what was that for you? Like, did you get to the bottom of why, you kind of had that belief, or were you just able to like jump right in and kind of overcome that and help others?
Yeah, such a great question. I think, first and foremost, what I said before, like just realizing that that experience, that traumatic, the big T trauma that I had, right, was strongly responsible for a lot of maybe the scarcity mentality I had, the negative thoughts I had, the negative relationship that I had with money, and my lack of progress with it at the time. But I think one thing I really noticed, two things actually that I noticed with my money story. One is that like I sometimes use my spending and even my earning as a coping mechanism, right? And so what I mean by that is spending wise, a little bit simpler to explain. It's I'm having anxiety about something, right? And instead, like some people go and work out, some people will do drugs, some people will drink, some people will, cope. You got to cope somehow, some way. And I
Mhm.
found that a lot of times that I've just coped with spending my money, right? That's either buying new things or spending money to give me that quick fix of dopamine, right? And then just back to square one, maybe a couple of hours later. So I've realized it's one of my coping mechanisms to spend money. Another thing that I've realized though is that it is my ego as well. What I mean by that is like the ego is like a strong responsibility for your ego is to keep you in your comfort zone, like what they think, what it thinks is normal. And so I love to use the example of like, imagine a kid or a child that grew up in a chaotic household or a chaotic environment from age 0 to 18. Right. That's all they know is chaos. Right. And you take them out of that environment and you put them into a healthy home. What starts to happen after a couple of months, right? They start to create drama. They start to create chaos because that's what's normal to them. Though it's not normal by reality's terms, right? It's like their ego and their nervous system only know chaos. So they look to create chaos. And so, point being is, I saw when I was younger, right? Like make a lot of money, spend a lot of it, like just
Mhm.
this cyclical turmoil relationship with money, right? And so, that's what I thought was normal. And so when I would make a lot of money, I'd go spend it. Make a lot of money, go spend it. And as time went on, I just got more creative with it and put a pretty bow on it and called it an investment. Right. But really at the end of the day, I just didn't feel safe with the amount of money that was sitting in my account due to what happened to me in childhood and what I experienced. And so I started to get rid of money, right,
Mhm.
to make myself feel safe from what I thought was normal. And then also on the earning side of things too, as well, just earning a whole bunch of money, right, to make myself feel safe, and then just keeping the cycle going with the spending and the coping. And really, what I just found is that's just all I was doing was just mirroring what I saw as a child, right? Until I took the time to understand that that's what I was doing, I couldn't really make the change.
So what's the first step to making the change? Like if someone, I know there's a lot of work that goes into even identifying what that is, what the coping mechanism is, what the trauma is, because sometimes as an adult, like we haven't ever looked at that, right? And so we kind of, might have to do a lot of internal work to figure it out. But then like what do you do from there? Like how did
Yeah.
you then correct that so you weren't spending everything you made? And like how would you direct someone um who's going through that? Like maybe it's the opposite. Maybe like my coping or behavior pattern is hoarding it. Hoarding it because you're afraid it's going to like if you spend it, it's you're never going to get it back. So you just hoard it and you don't ever spend it and you're like afraid to spend it. Um, and so like where do you go from there? What do you do?
Think the first thing that comes to mind is like creating like a scarcity journal, if you will. Like, what negative thoughts do you have around money? Do you have around earning it? Do you have around spending it? Right? Like, what are those thoughts? And just becoming aware of those first and foremost, and then asking yourself where those came from. Like, where did those come from? Where identify the root cause of them. Right. And then from there, like now that you know those things, you can start to work through them and reshift your mindset and your paradigms and your outlook on them. And so for me, what I did is honestly, I hired a coach who could hold a mirror up for me. Right. Financial coaches like what we have, they're fantastic and they're awesome. Like we are all certified. At least all the coaches below me are all certified. We're working on getting the last one certified from the International Federation of Coaching at IF. Yeah, something like that. It's one of those big
Mhm.
accreditations, right? Just to be able to hold that space with people, to hold that mirror up and help them. But for me, I went and got maybe not available to everybody, but a one-on-one spiritual life mentor who I've been working with for like 2 years now. And if it's up to my wife, he's on a lifetime retainer to continue to work with them. And it really just helped me, hold a mirror up for me and ask me the right questions, right, to lead me to the right answers when it comes to like, did these thoughts serve me? Well, where did they come from? How did they serve me? Right. And how are they not serving me anymore? And what can I replace them with?
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's so important that you say like getting a coach, because what I've noticed is a lot of times we are kind of like blind to some of these things. Like we don't really see maybe what someone else would see as we're uncovering this stuff. And it's really important to have someone that not only you can trust but and can hold space for you, but that like kind of knows what to look for, because sometimes like we'll go through our whole life and we'll never see that. It's like our blind spot. And a lot of times people will blame like everyone else, but not really like look in the mirror at like, okay, what am I doing, what can I control, and how can I shift that. And it's funny that you said like your wife would just have him on retainer. So like, don't you think, like, would you agree that focusing on all that, like the spiritual stuff, the mindset, improves relationships too? Because I feel like there's usually like, I see such a imbalance where like there will be one spouse or girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, that like is really into it and then the other isn't. And then all of a sudden one person is healing and growing and the other person's staying the same. And then there's like this riff.
Yeah, yeah, I 1000% agree because when you do the healing, it helps you understand why you show up the way you do. And then also what is still productive and what's not. And so I've learned through my healing journey that I don't do well with conversations around my inadequacies. Right. And
Yeah,
when you have conversations with your significant other, like, you're sitting down, like, how can we do better? Right. Like, even if it comes from a healthy standpoint, and really at the end of the day, the essence of it's like, I'm talking about my inadequacies. I'm opening myself up to being able just to, ask you for feedback on, what am I doing? What could I do better? Right. And
right.
even if it comes from a healthy standpoint, if you're not healed and you have wounds around the stories you've made up around your inadequacies and what they mean about you, then like the way that you're going to show up in that conversation or relationship is not going to be a healthy one. And so for me, I found that like I felt growing up with my dad that it was never enough. Right. And so inadequacies threatened it being never enough. Right. Inadequacies threatened me being accepted and loved, or at least what I thought, right, by the people around me. And so when I realized that, and I'm still working through it, I'm still on a scale of 1 to 10, I maybe jumped from like a 1 skill level to maybe like a 5 or 6. Still got plenty of room left to go, but I'm aware of it now, though,
Hmm.
right? And it can help make that change. And then also too, like there's just sometimes where like I'm not in the right headspace to have those conversations because I know I'm going to be triggered by it. And just that awareness there allows me to speak up and ask for my boundaries or ask permission for a little bit of a delay or just ask for what I need. Like, hey, can we talk about this tomorrow? Right. And not feel wrong about it either. So it's like it's helped me a ton in my business for sure. It's helped me a ton with my money situation and the attraction component of it, but
Hmm.
definitely with my relationships too as well. Just, it's the biggest relationship that we're showing up to every single day, like our marriage. And so just to be able to understand, why I show up the way I do and where I have areas for improvement is helpful while also showing myself grace along the way.
Yeah, I love that. And I love like having the permission to just say like, hey, let's put this off until later. Like if your energy's not right. Like that's such a good piece of advice that I never remember, that's for sure. And like that can lead to, some blow ups and things like that. Um, but we were talking before we started recording on, I'm very big on like manifesting a life you don't need a vacation from. And you are big on like helping people create their desired lifestyles. So maybe you could talk about that a little bit, because it's not really about like so much the dollar amount. It's like the money that's giving you the freedom to live the life however you want to live it, right?
Absolutely. And it's our company slogan is that money's the tool, but freedom's the goal.
Oh, I
right? And it's
love that.
impossible. Thank you, thank you. It's impossible to live your dream life, we found, if you don't have your money under control. Because nobody listening to this would probably qualify their dream life as while you're living your dream life, you probably don't have worries around money. You probably don't have limitations around money. And your dream life probably has all the opportunities that it could possibly have, particularly when it comes to being able to manage and leverage money to get there. And so my point of saying that is like, just to go back to my original point, it's like, it's impossible to live your dream life if you don't have your money under control. And
Mhm.
so, like you said, I really don't care about the dollar amount itself. I don't care about, investments themselves. I don't care about growing your business in itself. I care about the opportunities and lifestyle it's going to provide for you and your family. And we find that the majority of people's stresses and anxieties in life, can be traced back to money somehow. And the majority of those money stresses and anxieties, right, are unnecessary or they're avoidable. And they're created through subjectivity, if you will, right? Like, give me an example. Not being insensitive to people's thoughts, but this is really what we find. It's like, I think I need to invest this money. I think I should be saving more money. I think I should stop spending over here. I think I should buy a house. I think I should invest in this in my business. All of that, I think, is a gray area. All of that gray area is what creates confusion and frustration and then stress and anxiety, right? And when you can replace that with objectivity, black and white, like here's what actually makes sense for you to be doing, what we're working on, where we're headed, and what we need to do to get there, 90% of people's stresses and anxieties, just completely fall off right there, right? They might not like the numbers a ton, right? But just having some control, some empowerment, some objectivity, and some clarity over what's happening really does drop a lot of the stress and anxiety initially. And whatever is left over is a trigger that we need to dig deeper on. Right. But to go back to your question, the money isn't, I mean, the goal isn't to feel good, it's to be free.
Mm.
Right. And money is a big, big component of that too. It's very helpful to help you live your dream life. But another big part of being free is I know a lot of people that got a lot of money, right? A lot of big houses, they're in financial freedom numerically, right? And like a catastrophe would have to happen for it to go away. But they're miserable. And it has nothing to do with the money. Right, at all, right? Money's a piece of paper or a piece of plastic, right? It's neutral. The human being behind it assigns the value and the damage or the good that it can do. Well, my point is like when people make money their source or their foundation or their worth, and then they're just left with this emptiness and they're not free because they're still stuck with the stresses and anxieties and struggles that they have in life, because they didn't follow my other favorite quote, which is money's a great tool, but a terrible God.
Oh, I like
So
that.
thank you. And so, like, it's just what I'm trying to get at here is that, like, dream life is incredible. We want people to do it. We want people to be financially free. And those are some components that we work on, numerically and mindset wise, because you can get there numerically, but are you actually free internally? And then just really from like a quantitative or more so black and white standpoint, when we teach financial freedom, our definition of it is owning an asset or assets that make you enough money each month automatically, whether you choose to show up or not. And that money is enough to cover your expenses and your lifestyle, right? An asset is just something that is money, is making you money, or can make you money, right? And so, most of our clients are business owners, right? And so their business is that asset. And so what we do when clients first come to us, this is the process we take. And I advise anybody to take this, right? We implement the right systems for their finances, right? Make sure they're doing the right things.
Mhm.
All right. When then we help them, in parallel, build a better relationship with money, like those two buckets, right? Then from there, we implement the right strategies with their money, right? To make sure that they're growing it and doing the right things with it. And then from there, we shift our focus to their income. And their income most times comes from their business. So now it's time to optimize the business to make sure the business is making enough money while taking the exact amount of time and energy that you wanted to take from you, while also having the profit margins left over that we can then go buy other assets with and diversify the financial freedom. And so kind of taking that process, and we tell people all the time, like more money is not the solution, right? At least at first, we're not against making
Yep.
more money, but you're not going to out earn your poor money habits and your poor money beliefs. And so that's kind of the why we take that trajectory. And really, ultimately, it's just to get people to that dream life, whatever that looks like for you. We want to get you there. And a big component of that is utilizing the beautiful tool called money to accomplish that.
I love how you do like such a mix between, the mindset piece and like the healing piece, but then also strategy because like it is so hard, first of all, well, I'm saying it's so hard, but like it's just based on, I guess, the way we're taught from like kids on up now. Like you hear like traditional businesses and marketing companies and stuff can be very like masculine focus. So it's all about the strategy and it's all about this, that, or the other. And then you have the flip side. Like I work with a lot of people who are very into, spirituality, and they have these spiritual businesses. And it's like the opposite, where it's like all mindset work, all energetic work, but no strategy. And it sounds like you're really finding sort of like that middle ground that you need, right? It's like balancing the masculine and the feminine energies. And when we grew up like only learning to be in our masculine, and it's like kind of shut off that right side of the brain, it can be hard to switch that. But I feel like you have a very good balance. Do you like, have you worked at that? Do you ever talk about the masculine and feminine energies? Because I'm like so fascinated by the whole concept.
Yeah. That's exactly it. That's why if you can't see, I did the A-OK sign to her when she was saying masculine and feminine, because when I said two buckets earlier, I said systems and strategies and relationship with
Hmm.
money or internal world, right? That's what I mean. The systems and strategies, the masculine, right? And the internal world is the feminine. And so I see the perfect blend. My friend Kelly Brock gave me this example or this analogy. The perfect blend of feminine and masculine energy is like, think about feminine energy as like a body of water with no banks, no outlet. It's just flowing anywhere, right? And everywhere,
Hmm.
right? And masculine energy, when blended perfectly with feminine energy, is like the river banks, right? And the water is still flowing, but it's flowing with intention, it's flowing with direction, it's flowing with purpose, and it's flowing towards a destination, right? And so that's what we try to do. We try to be the river banks and the free flowing water at the same time, and that's usually how you get best results, I think, with anything. And so we love to balance the masculine and the feminine, because I was very masculine at first, like just with the systems and strategies. And I got to a point where like I built a decent amount of wealth, but you could tell there's something missing. You could tell I was like,
Hmm.
why am I looking at my bank account and seeing a number that is tremendous that I wanted to hit, but it's still not enough? I still don't feel safe. Right? There's still
Yeah.
something that's off about that. And it's because I had to go within. Um, and so I love the quote that you're not gonna hustle culture your way to financial freedom, and you're also not gonna woo-woo yourself there either, right? You have to blend both, right? You have to have the
I
systems
love
and
that.
strategy and the feminine mixed. And so yeah, I've just had a bunch of experiences. I go down a bunch of rabbit holes with it, but we have just found with ourselves as a company, right? And our most successful clients, when you can kind of catch on to that healthy balance of the masculine and feminine, that's when you start to unlock great results.
I love that analogy about the ocean and like the river, because it's like it's really hard to, I feel like we get to this point where we kind of realize there's an imbalance, and then you hear people kind of almost like demonizing like masculinity and like masculine energy, and it's like no, we need both. Like both are great and we need a good balance of both. And I love that. Like it's the perfect analogy to explain it. Um, so then when you get to that point where you're focusing on the strategy, do you have like, I don't know, like an unconventional strategy or just like one strategy you could share with us today on, helping your business, your financial success, or just something that you kind
Yeah.
of like to teach your clients?
Yeah. Let me think. I got a couple maybe. So I love the idea for people when I tell them that, like, I don't want you to be wealthy for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, even 30 years to come. I want you to be wealthy for generations to come. And I think business owners that build that generational wealth do it on a strong foundation that is predominantly built on financial literacy and stability. Right. And so using the word foundation, just understanding financial foundations, right? And there's three on top of this, right? Systems and relationship with money, right? There's like three goals, if you will. We call it like having a mission for your money is really important. And the first mission should be able to lay the solid foundation so then we can build the castle on top of that instead of skipping the important parts. And so when it comes to strategy for your finances, you want to have an emergency fund. You want to know how to manage debt, which I'll dive into a little bit. And the third one being a little bit looser than the first two, but at some point, if you're going to have a roof over your head that you're going to pay for as a home, we want you to own that home instead of rent it. Right. Again, a little bit looser, a little bit more based on unique variables. And, there could be some arguments about why it doesn't make sense to buy a house right now, why it doesn't make sense maybe possibly ever for some unique cases. Right. But when it comes to having an emergency fund and knowing how to manage debt, I there's very little argument for someone not wanting to do that or not needing to do that, right? And so for as an emergency fund, think about a savings account as an overall umbrella. And you could save for just about anything, right? A car, a house, a vacation, or what we argue is the most important saving account, which is an emergency fund, right? It's just a pot of money set aside in an accessible account that if, not if, but when something pops up, right, you have that money to help you and your family and your business weather the storm. It's not from a scarcity mentality. It's just from a factual mentality. It's just a matter of time that life's going to life and something's going to pop up and you're going to need some money to be able to weather that storm. And so, how to come up with that number, strategy standpoint, right? We say no less than 3 months and no more than 6 months. Anything less than 3 months, and I'll get to 3 months of what here in a second. Anything less than 3 months is a risk. Anything more than 6 months is a waste of money, just having that money sitting in a basic checking or savings, right? And so 3 to 6 months of what? This is where people often get confused too as well. It's not your income, it's your expenses, right? If an emergency hit, we just need to be able to pay your expenses, right? And so like go through your budget or go through your numbers and just ask yourself, an emergency popped up, what would be my monthly expenses, right? And so let's just say for easy numbers, it's $5,000, right? And we decide that you need 4 months of emergency funds, right? The months that you need is going to be based off unique variables, right? Like what are your liabilities? What are your responsibilities? How many kids do you have, right? Like what's your mortgage, right? Like those types of things. We got to dig deep to figure out like what makes sense for you, 3, 4, 5, or 6 months. But let's just say for this simple example, it's 4 months. So 4 months times $5,000 in monthly expenses equals $20,000 you need for your emergency fund, right? And I advise that I don't like to use that word. I recommend that you establish an emergency fund for the personal side of things and for the business side of things, right?
Oh,
Because they're
that's
two separate
smart.
entities, right?
Yeah.
And so on that note, running a separate budgeting system, right, or P&L, whatever we want to call it, a way to track our income and our expenses, right? We want to run a separate one for the personal and the business, right?
Mhm.
People often muddy the waters, and that gets dangerous from a liability standpoint, but also just confusing and more complicated than it needs to be for many reasons. And so, like I said a few minutes ago, like the federal government looks at you and your business as two separate entities, so we must manage the money accordingly or the same,
Mhm.
right? And so that would be like the emergency fund side of things. When I say manage debt, right, it means understand the difference between good debt and bad debt and get rid of bad debt and leverage good debt, right? Bad debt is buying things you don't need with money you don't have with no plan on how to pay it back, right?
Yep.
And good debt is leveraging other people's money at a low cost or no cost to increase your value, your opportunities, and your impact. And so, give you an example, right? I'm sure everyone can, paint their own picture around bad debt, but good debt, give you an example here, right? Like when I first got started in the online business industry, I hired mentors. I opened up a 0% APR credit card, which means it has 0% interest for, I think it was 15 months, this credit card. I purchased their services, which was $18,000, put it on that card, right? Immediately got $200 cash back, right? And the
Mhm.
first payment on that card wasn't due for 45 days. But as soon as I swiped it, I got access to the program, right? So within 45 days, I basically made my money back on 18,000. I hadn't even used a single dollar of my own money yet because the monthly payment wasn't due for the first 45 days, right? That's good debt, right? And so those would be the two things that I would start foundationally. After that, right, just ask yourself, where is your money best spent based on your unique situation? Is it in the stock market? Is it in your business? And I'm not against the stock market. I invest a good amount of money in it, right? But my situation is a little bit different than maybe most people listening. And maybe not. Maybe some other people have goals that, align with investing in the stock market. But my point is for business owners, you have this unique nuance where in the short term, your money and also your time and energy are best spent invested in your business, right? Because the best way to, I think, become financially free is to become an equity millionaire first, right? Which means that you don't have $1 million in cash, but you own things like businesses that are worth millions. And if you're doing it the right way, those businesses that are worth millions are now profiting large amounts or profiting much more than you did before, right? Or from how much you're profiting from your past situation. And so your time, your money, and your energy, particularly your money, is best spent strategically and intentionally investing in your business to grow it to larger profit margins. Right. Then we have more money left over each month where we can go invest in other long-term things like the stock market. Right. But as soon as you put your money in the stock market, it's not available to invest in your business. And if you've got limited
Right.
funds and you need funds to scale your business to then make more money, to have more money left over, like probably makes sense strategically to do that first.
I think you said so many important things. I just want to like back up in case anyone like missed any of that because number one, like you don't want to have millions in the bank, but you want to have businesses worth millions. And I wanted to like touch on that because I don't know if a lot of people realize this. I didn't until I don't know, not that long ago, but a lot of the really successful people that we see, like Elon Musk is a perfect example because he like flat out says this. If you look at their bank accounts, you'd be shocked at how little is there. They have money through all of these different companies and assets. And that's where I think there needs to be sort of a mindset shift because I think most people that are just getting started in business don't realize that. And you're like, I want $1 million in the bank. And it's like, well, no, like you're saying, income producing assets, like that would be a great thing to set up. And then the other thing that I want to get your opinion on because so I have a 15-year-old, okay? She's at that age where everyone in school is telling her like, okay, what college are you going to go to? What degree are you going to get? And I'm very like I'm a different kind of parent and I'm just looking at it and it's like, okay, I can hand you $100,000 and go, go get this degree, which she doesn't know what she wants to do because she's 15, obviously. But I'm thinking about what you said, like spending that 18,000 and then you went and you got these coaches and these mentors that helped you really set that foundation for your business a lot cheaper than a 4-year degree. And I'm not knocking college and saying we shouldn't send kids to college. I'm just saying like there are options that are actually a lot cheaper, but that can have such a big impact in these kids' lives. Like, and I've had that conversation with my daughter, like, all right, so I can write a check for this, or I can write a check for you to go and find a mentor that's doing what you want to do and you can learn from them. Or you can do a mix of both and see. But what are your thoughts on that? Like, just being that you're into finance and business, are you kind of still on board with like the traditional 4-year degree, or are you kind of thinking like kids should be opened up to starting businesses, or are they just too young at 18 to really do that?
It's a great
And I
question.
don't mean
And
to like
so,
throw these random questions, but I'm just
no, no,
genuinely curious, like what your perspective is, because I'm kind of on the fence right now as a
yeah,
parent.
yeah. I I love this question because I think personally I can talk from both sides. So I've got a dual undergrad degree and also a master's degree, and at times thought I was going to go to, excuse me, a medical school, and they serve their purposes. They helped me, right? But then also now I'm in the entrepreneur space and I'm like, I don't use those, need any of those, you know what I mean? Yes, did they
Right.
help me get positions in the corporate world that helped me learn how to run a business at a high level because I worked for some amazing businesses in the Johns Hopkins medicine system? 1000%, right? So but also at the same time, I'm was meant to be a business owner, and so it's like, did I even need to spend all that money on those degrees? And so I guess to answer your question, my suggestion would be to do what is most aligned with the career that the child wants. If the child wants to be a teacher, they need to get a degree to be a teacher, right? If the child wants to be an accountant, they need to get a degree to be an accountant,
Right.
right? And so I think it's dictated based on the career that they want to pursue, which one's the best option for them. And and then they come to, I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to this, maybe even you, it's just like, what if they don't know? I think that, college is a pricey investment to help them figure that out, right?
Which is
And,
most
and
kids realistically,
yeah,
like, and the
yeah.
ones that say, like, I want to be a teacher or whatever, a lot of times, I mean, not all the time, but a lot of times that's like the parent kind of putting their, you know, expectation on them, I think. But I think what really got me like thinking about this was the counselor like sat down and talked to these kids and I was shocked. I was like, good job on this counselor because she kind of laid it out and she was like, look, if you want to get a 9 to 5 job, go to college. If you want to run a business, start now. Whatever industry you're interested in, go get a job in that industry now and start learning. And I was like, oh my God, this is like a school counselor that's supposed to tell them like the traditional path. But that really like hit my daughter. And she was like, she saw me go through the corporate world for 12 years. And I mean, it was awful. I was never around. I was constantly putting her in childcare. It was a horrible experience. And she's like, well, I don't want that. Like, I want to have freedom. Like, I want to do what you're doing and be able to like, have time and everything else. So anyhow, she just started a podcast and because that's what I told her. I'm like, start now, do what the counselor said, get started now. So it's just interesting. I feel like the world is changing, and like with technology, there's so many things that are going to be available to this generation that we didn't have. I mean, we had technology, but not like this. It wasn't to the
Yeah.
same degree where we could just start a podcast as a teenager and start making connections and everything else. So I didn't mean to like throw you a curveball, but I'm just like,
I like
I
it.
like love this topic because it's like we got to start thinking about these things as parents, you know?
Right, right. And like nobody says they got to start at 18. Says she goes down this journey until she's 20 and hires a mentor and starts the podcast. And then it's like, you know what? I think I found that college is for me. Then she can go then. Right. But like
Yeah,
I just sometimes it's a big, really big investment to send people to send kids to college, to try to figure out what they want to do and then come out of it with a really expensive degree that they didn't enjoy, it's not applicable, don't like, and probably are not going to use, you know.
right, right.
So again, not against the traditional way. If it aligns with the child's career aspirations, then great.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. And you said earlier too, like building a legacy, you know? So like what does that mean to you? Like how are you, because are you a parent?
She will be 5 months in a couple of days.
Oh, congratulations. Oh, so you're
Thank
still
you.
not getting a lot of sleep, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Oh my gosh. So,
Yeah.
so is that what you mean, like with building a legacy, like something that then, if your kids wanted to take over as adults, they could, like, what does that mean? Or does it just mean like
Yeah.
putting your mark on the world?
Yeah, yeah. I think family and society, right? I want to be impacted by it. And like starting with the family, it's, building a legacy is, yes, I want to leave them with strong financial foundations. Yes, the money piece of it too as well. But I want to be comprehensive with it, meaning like actually teach them good money principles, right? Actually have them respect money. Right. Money's just a relationship, right? You and your money just have a relationship, just like me and my wife, just like you and your significant other do, right? It's two parties involved in a relationship, and you can't expect to disrespect, neglect, and ignore that other party and get best results, right? And so I want to be able to teach them that relationship piece too as well, while they're equipped and maybe blessed with good fortune, as inheritance or as a trust, if you will. And so start them off the right way holistically with their money. And then society too, as well. Like I truthfully believe that our company is making society a much better place. Like, are we perfect? No. Do we have some, suboptimal client interactions or results from time to time? 1000%. But that's just kind of part of the game. We have hundreds and hundreds of active clients, right? But at the end of the day, I was talking to my wife the other day, and I was like, the majority of clients that come to us, if they come to us and play their part, they leave better than when they found us, and so
Yeah.
that's what matters to me. And that's that legacy and just teaching people, how to manage their money better, how to have a better relationship with money so they can do the same thing for their children is kind of, what I mean by that legacy piece.
Oh, I love it. I love it. All right, I'll give you one last question that I ask everybody.
Yeah.
What are you currently trying to manifest? And it could be manifesting something in your personal life, in your business, big, small, doesn't matter. What are you currently like setting your sights on?
You got another 30 minutes.
Go for it.
um, Right now, we have me and the president of my company. So I'm the CEO. I have a president who handles all the internal operations, and we just recently put together our 5-year vision for the company. And vision usually is very numerical, right? And so it's the amount of clients that we want to bring in, the amount of revenue and cash collected that we want to do, and the amount of events. We like to do in-person events too, as well, that we want to do a year, right? We know if those things are matching up numerically, then they're just byproducts of the impact that we're having. Income is just a byproduct of impact, right? And so they're pretty large numbers. And again, they're very intentionally drawn out. And it's not just this, I want to make $15 million just to say I did it. There's some strong intention and some pure motives behind them. And so we're trying to manifest that. And one thing that I did for the manifestation process is I bought myself and the 3 other executives at my company, our chief marketing officer, our chief of sales, and our president. I bought us all a totem, right? That sits mine's right in front of me on my what is that called? The wood slab above my fireplace. Vanity,
The
whatever.
mantle, or
The
right?
mantle, there we go.
Yeah.
The mantle. They're sitting right there, and each one of us, I bought each one of us them, and I told them what they were symbolic, right? And what they meant about them and meant to me. And I told them that they were all a pair of shoes, like a custom or nice pair of shoes that represented us really well. And I said, you can't wear them until we hit that goal, but put them in your sight every single day to help with the manifestation process.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you have an intention behind the money because how often are we like, oh, I want to make 10 million or whatever, and there's no reason behind it. It's just like an obscure number. So I love that you like put that intention behind it. And another good thing, having like that way you're going to celebrate, having something in sight that you can see every single day. I love that. That's such a good answer. All right, where can everyone find you? Tell everyone about your program where you're helping business owners. Give us all the details.
For sure. So you can find me on Instagram at Justin_Buonomo. The spelling will be in the show notes. It's a disaster. I'm not even gonna try to spell it right now. Just look up the spelling, find me there. Shoot me a follow and a message, and be happy to chat. And then when it comes to like services, so we do financial strategy and coaching for business owners, right? A lot of the things that you actually, everything that you heard here today, when I'm talking about finances, is what we focus on, in our programs. And so the biggest thing is just customizing your financial strategy and journey for you. Because today I give a lot of blanket and general advice, which is good, right? You can get good results off of blanket and general advice. What we found is when you can work with somebody who can understand your unique variables, simply put, what makes you different, which also justifies you having a different and custom strategy to get you optimal results, is key. Because what works for me may not work best for Stephanie. What works for Stephanie may not work best for some of the listeners here, and that's okay, right? It's because we're all unique human beings, right? Who need that tailored approach when it comes to the strategy and the coaching. And so we do have open spots for that program. I can put the link in the bio for them to book a call with one of my team members. Her name's Stephanie Hall. She's like the coolest individual in the world, originally from Hawaii, lives in California, and just is kind of like our gatekeeper, if you will. She gives you all the information you need about us. We'll gather all the information we need about you and figure out if and how we can help you. And if we can't, you'll still be better off just from that phone call. And if we can, we'll talk about what that looks like. So welcome anybody with arms wide open. No shame, no embarrassment, no guilt about your lack of financial progress or literacy. Like, it's why a company like mine is super successful, and we enjoy helping people with that and making them feel safe in the process.
Oh, amazing. I will link all of that in the show notes for everybody. And Justin, thanks so much for coming on. You shared so many good insights. I'm sorry to throw so many questions at you, but I just really appreciate, like, I feel like you gave so many pieces of wisdom that are going to help people get started.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to hear that.
All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you back here next week.